Hello, and thank you for your interest in Sunipro Roundtables. For those viewers who we have not had a chance to meet, I'd like to take a quick minute to introduce ourselves and a brief background on why we started the Roundtables. Sunipro is a management consulting company focusing on M&A and digital transformation. Within M&A, we work across the life cycle from financial and IT due diligence, day one readiness, and post day one TSA exit management. Within digital transformation, we've performed ERP assessments, large-scale technology implementations, and data center migrations to the cloud as a few examples. We decided to start this series as a way to let experts within an industry or specific subject matter respond to questions that are really on everyone's mind. Be able to get a unique insight from folks that really live this day to day. Our topic today is solar energy and energy storage, with three amazing guests from different spaces within the industry. Hope you enjoy, and thank you very much. Hello, everyone. My name is Pranav Patel, Managing Director here at Sunipro. Welcome to Sunipro Roundtables, where we discuss top-of-mind subjects with industry experts. Our topic today is solar power and renewable energy in general. So, renewables and solar has really picked up over the last 10 years, and especially in the last few, we've seen exponential growth. So a lot of organizations, leaders, even outside of solar, government, are interested in what's going on. What are some of the challenges that we're facing in the industry, and what are the opportunities we have based on their sector? So we have with us Vincent Varughese from Spruce Power, M&A director, very extensive experience in the asset management and financial side. Greg Shambo, Borrego, about 15 years or so experience in wind and developing assets. And Chris from Yada Energy, senior engineer in design and specializing in distributed energy. So with that, just want to start with the high level. So what are your thoughts on where the solar industry is headed? What are some of the trends you're seeing that we're going to have to kind of prepare ourselves for going into 23 and even 2024? And Chris, we'll go ahead and start with you.
I think the obvious answer is storage, and we've been talking about it now for about 5 years. We've been going to every show, and everyone asks about storage, but it's here, it's real, it's here now. So I think that's going to be the biggest challenge for all of us. What kind of storage, where it's located, how it's deployed is kind of the next big challenge.
Awesome. Greg, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt the solar industry is growing rapidly. It's driven by increased demand for renewable energy sources and these super government incentives that we're now seeing. I kind of feel there are like three areas to look for: the fine print of the IRA, how that's going. It's certainly going to drive installations up. But the devil's in the details. It's not completely clear on when and how much of those tax credits a company can get. I think we're going to see partnerships, buying partnerships. And just last year, I think it was in December, we had the U.S. Solar Buyer Consortium buying $6 billion worth of U.S.-made solar panels. And there's emerging platforms like ANZA, which is a intelligent procurement platform that can give an individual that level of buying power. And maybe, like, lastly, our public and private responsibility for end of life. There's 8 gigawatts of projects that are reaching that 10 years of operation this year. And solar panels are harmful materials, right? And it costs $2 to throw it in a landfill. It costs $30 to recycle it properly. And I think companies like Solar Cycle that are out there are gearing up to ensure that we do this, but also, make it a lot less than $30 to recycle per panel. So I kind of see those things as emerging over the next year or two.
Right. No, that's a great point, right? I think everyone's talking growth, build, but you're right. The technology's been around long enough, and we're gonna see it hit as as technology expires on how to renew. Do you see kind of in the IRA already, or maybe it takes more digging in, and how that's going to help specifically on the recycling end, on the disposing end?
That's a good question. I am on one of the working groups with SIA for the IRA. We've been more focused on the definitions around how you pay wages for the prevailing wage rates and on the apprenticeship programs that are mandatory to receive some of these tax credits. But I can't speak to if there's a definition around the end of life of solar project. I think it's more focused on let's get the new ones built right now.
Yeah, I agree. Awesome. Thank you, Greg. Vincent.
Yeah, I certainly agree with both Chris and Greg. We certainly expect demand to grow quite a bit this decade compared to the last. There's a number of factors driving that. One being a lot of the local utilities are switching over to a time of use rate plan, and you're starting to see that more and more. Out in California, we're seeing, peak rates go as high as, 45 cents per kilowatt hour. And that's, so when you start, putting the cost of solar against that, it's basically a no brainer. And so we certainly see that driving a lot of the demand, and also the technology is, as both Chris and Greg was talking about, the storage is definitely, super popular, and, for a lot of reasons, the resilience aspects of it, for power outages and things, but also to kind of level out the pull on off of the grid and things. So, we at Spruce Power, we certainly expect this decade to be very, very busy, and I think the street kind of looks at it that way as well.
Yeah, from a financial aspect, do you see more of, I guess, the benefits coming as over the past years in maybe production costs, as in array costs, or is it more on the operational side where you're seeing some of the kind of increased benefits?
Yeah, the cost of equipment has certainly had a downward trajectory over the last 10 years or so. These days installing residential solar is varying somewhere between $3.25 to $4 a watt, and so that's quite a bit less than in past years. So certainly the pricing is on that side of it is getting competitive. Also, financing vehicles are very easy to find these days, whether it be a loan or a PPA or a lease. Consumers have a number of options to finance their purchase and installation of solar. So a lot of factors there that make it easy for folks to do it. And again, like, the technology is just really amazing these days with the the capabilities that storage kind of brings to it. And then now you're seeing electrical panels, smart electrical panels kind of come in, and folks are installing that with their solar systems as well, and to kind of taking advantage of the ITC with all of that. So a lot of innovation, and we see all of that kind of driving it as well.
Nice. I know we spoke about our IRA quickly, but from your perspective, how do you think IRA is going to have any impact on acquisitions, or just how people value assets now? Will it change anything?
Yeah. At Spruce Power, we don't have any direct exposure to the ITC because we no longer originate new systems. We have in the past for a long time. We wound the originations down in 2018 and kind of pivoted more towards a growth by M&A strategy. And so, where we get our growth from is once customers, usually with PPA and lease products, once they're kind of seasoned, they may be in their fourth or fifth year of their contract, and the developer really doesn't have, a lot of them don't have an interest in holding those contracts over the long term. Kind of like mortgages, right? Your mortgage originators usually don't want to hold that 30-year loan. They're going to sell that off. So we're kind of the back end, call it the company, the firm that buys it and makes the developer whole, and then we'll hold the long-term paper there. So long way of answering your question in terms of the IRA. We certainly have a positive view in terms of the extension of the ITC. We see that as a good thing. But for Spruce, not really a direct exposure to it.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense, right? I think it is really more geared towards direct residential kind of customers. Chris, can kind of throw the same question to you. What do you see really as the impact of IRA to your specific industry?
Yeah, well, I think the key thing we haven't talked about yet is electric vehicles. I see that's a huge piece of this right here. Electric vehicles, the deployment of that, car charging stations readily available throughout the country. And again, I'm going to back it up with that storage as well. So having that ability to have that kind of pronged approach with the solar is kind of where I see the future going. That's the easiest and fastest way to get mass adoption through the IRA.
Completely agree. Greg, I know you touched on a little bit, but if you do have anything to add.
Oh, I appreciate it. I agree with what everyone's saying. From the perspective of the tax credit, I mean, if you follow the rules, you can receive up to 30% credit, which is phenomenal. That's going to fuel the growth. But if you mess something up, it's going to be maybe 6%. So there's this huge delta between getting it right and getting it wrong that could cost companies, C&I or utility projects, millions of dollars. Luckily there's a good faith clause in the act that in the legislation that allows companies to make a mistake for misinterpreting the rules, because they are pretty gray right now. But there's also, on the flip side, there's a very punitive damage if you try to manipulate them. So when we look at operations and maintenance, it's a bit different than EPC. EPC, you have construction, and that's named in the act, and you have your prevailing wages for construction wages if it's pouring concrete or a senior electrician. But when you move into operations and maintenance, we have things like repair and maintenance, and it's unclear if those require full prevailing wage for that area, or if an apprentice needs to be there a certain percent of the time. But like I said, even though it's going live, I think in a week or so, we're working with groups like SIA and other companies like the people on this call to get those details, because the intent is clear. They want renewable energy projects and anything that supports that to start booming our economy and getting people back to work with highly paid jobs, and that's good for all of us. Yeah, no,
Fully agree. And yeah, it's going to kind of come down to the details and really being able to understand.
Sure.
You mentioned you're kind of in a working group with it. So is part of that kind of setting up functions or sites or something to help people kind of translate the law and maybe kind of what it means based on your specific value chain?
I think that's the next step. Right now, we're working directly with the U.S. Treasury to understand the law, and then we've prepared several documents to them asking for clarification. Like, what do you mean by repair? Is a corrective visit for a operating solar plant considered a repair, or is that considered maintenance? And then how do we account for those, and how do we build the apprenticeship programs if required on the operations and maintenance side? So we're still helping them, because they're not necessarily experts in our industry. So we have a lot of people that are like, well, what about this specific thing around repairs or optimization versus the construction piece? And they've been very responsive to us. And again, it seems as though we're moving quickly, and we should have those clear definitions here soon.
Yeah. One I guess specific subset, I think it hits the bill, and really most folks in the U.S. as well, as they're really kind of learning more about the solar industry. So the actual residential subset, right? That demographic. I guess from your company's perspective and kind of what you do, How is this demographic kind of taken into place, and where do you see how they're impacted in some of the initiatives you have going on? And Greg, we can just kind of continue with you on that.
So I think in general, not just residential, because most of what we do at Borrego is C&I and utility. So it's, we call it DG, distributed generation, and it's really they're waiting right now, because when we send out what our operations and maintenance agreement's going to be for the next year or the next 10 years, a lot of that is contingent upon how much the labor cost is going to be. So we're kind of in this odd area where they're looking at planning for projects that are going live in a quarter or within a year, and looking at the budget that they made for it, and they may have to adjust that if the prevailing wage is going to be higher than what was expected. And we all know we have an envelope full of cash that starts on the development EPC phase, and by the time you get to the operations phase, there's only a few bills left. So we have to, they're usually pulling scope back to spend the money that they have. And now if we're going to increase that, it's going to be some challenge for some people as we get well into the new era of the IRA.
Gotcha. So it's more of a downstream impact for residential users, right? As the overall kind of operations and maintenance footprint gets lower.
Like I said, maybe Vincent could speak more on the residential side, but certainly with the business owners and the C&I scenarios, that is a downward impact. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. With that, Vincent, I know your focus area is definitely more on the residential side. Insight, appreciate it.
It's a good question, and I mean the answer is certainly absolutely yes, and I mean I would definitely concur and second what Chris had mentioned earlier with the EVs really coming in and taking hold. I mean that's really kind of driving a lot of demand up, because when you think about it from a consumer level, they're getting the EVs to cut down their fuel cost from gasoline, and then they're using their home power for fuel at that point. And so when you add in the solar, you basically knock out not only your home electric bill, but also your fuel cost. And so we certainly see that driving a lot of interest there. But on a macro level, I mean, again, I think that, and also the key thing is liquidity. I mean, there's a lot of financing options. There's, I mean, we certainly kind of probably made some news kind of coming into the market. We've been having this roll-up strategy, and we've been very, very active on the M&A front over the past 4 years. Haven't had much time to sleep, but it's been good. So yeah, I mean, it's just so a lot, as I said, like a lot of these developers are looking they like the fact that they can get more liquidity and develop more assets, right? And so they have folks like us on the back end that is interested and knowledgeable. And the thing with Spruce is we not only own the assets, but we also have a servicing arm. So and our servicing platform is at scale. So we certainly have a certain level of competitive advantage there, and be able to offer top dollar for developers that are looking to offload the assets from their balance sheet. So yeah, I mean, kind of like a lot of these factors kind of coming together, and I think really creating a perfect environment to cultivate solar across the board. I mean, resi, community solar, C&I, all of it. Yeah.
I did just kind of want to, in general, get your take on what do you see as the largest challenge now, right? It sounds like we have some good government support. We have good interest from a lot of different sectors. What do you see as kind of the biggest challenge going into the next year to try to gain some growth?
Well, I think capital is really the answer, right? How do you get that capital with the economy going the way that it's looking like it's going? I think that's as a concern for everybody. It's like, well, you got some money around here. Are you going to really put it towards solar, or are you going to save it? Kind of hoard that for right now. So I think it really comes down to where people are going to spend their money, residential and commercial for that matter. I think commercial they can pencil out a lot easier, and then finances is much more readily available. But yeah, I think on the residential side, there's a concern for a little bit of slowdown because of the economic issue that we currently face.
Yeah, when I think about challenges for residential commercial clients, we hear a lot about the cost of solar is decreasing, and in a lot of areas it is, but I don't know if anyone can argue that the cost of labor is decreasing, because it's not. The cost of labor and the labor pool, the labor pool is shallow. The cost of labor, experienced labor, is going up. And from an O&M perspective, this puts that price for the right O&M contract, whether it's for C&I or utility, at a much higher level than people expected. Although the result is the same, whether you are resi, C&I, or utility, you want 100% availability. And so on a utility project, there's enough money, even with some of these changes, to support a full-time person or a whole staff of people to every day work on 100% availability. When you're in C&I and DG, you can't afford one person for 100 or for a 1 megawatt rooftop or even a 10 megawatt ground site. So what you have is companies that have shared resources. So at Borrego, you may have 2 or 3 field service people maintaining 50, 60 C&I sites within a 4-hour drive zone. So what the best O&M providers are doing beyond just boots in the ground, and it will help with these challenges of increasing labor costs, is we're investing and have been investing in a data technology platform to reduce these costs. We have, at any one time, we may have 400 or 500 open service calls. We've got a scheduling artificial intelligence that the night before runs 4 or 5 different scenarios, picks the right one based on availability of parts, based on skill level of the field service people, and then that all gets downloaded to our field service person's iPhone app. So when they wake up in the morning, they see what they're going to do today, and they have their checklist in there, and they take pictures of that. So I think the best in class O&M providers are more than just boots on the ground. They're investing in the technology to help keep cost in line so that all levels, whether it's resi, C&I, utility, can afford the right operations and maintenance plan for the highest availability possible.
So does that, I guess, entail really looking at some of the better technologies for cleaning? You see bird control technologies out there to keep efficiencies up. I just on that.
Definitely for cleaning. Many of these solar utility sites, you have to bring in your own water, and you have to haul out your water. So you can think about how many hundreds of thousands of gallons of water that you have to deal with. And there are certainly some automated solutions out there, robotics, even on the vegetation management side. But I just haven't, and we've tried almost all of them. They're starting to gain traction. I'm hoping within the next year or two, you'll start seeing some cost-effective solutions. Because most of these sites, they don't need to be kept like a golf course, but they certainly need to have the grass less than 10 inches tall. And I think also the O&M design earlier up in the phase, you'd be surprised how many companies call us up wanting an O&M contract, and we let them know that they're going to need to mow 7 times during the year, and then their mowing costs are actually more than the O&M cost itself. That's something that could have been thought of well upstream if you have an operations mindset, as opposed to just let's just build it and move on to the next thing. So I think we need to work closer together as the developers, the EPCs, and the O&M to say, how do we put together the right overall package to maximize profit and availability, and that there aren't, minimize those surprises and risks that we have later on in the project life cycle.
Right. Yeah. I think collaboration's key, and I think probably a connection with all of us is the Intersolar or RE Plus events that we attend. Do you guys see those forums as kind of it's a general question? Do you see those as effective forums for people kind of getting things together, or do you really need some maybe offside or side channels of communication to really get the OPCs and the asset management folks together?
I think that's a great start. And I think what you're doing here, getting, people together, having the conversations is another way to spread that knowledge. And that's why, I give my time to do this, and at RE Plus and in SAMNA, those events, we have people that are experts that go and speak or moderate some of the panels. I think that's a great place for us to collaborate and have best practices. And solar, unlike wind, when I have a lot of wind background as well, before I came to Borrego, wind always seemed to be, let's not tell anyone anything. It was all very secretive. The locations, the data you had, and there were very small pockets of sharing information. I feel solar is very different. It's an open community at all levels, and in most cases, people are more than happy to share their experience with you.
Yeah, no, and that's definitely the intent of this, was just to hope to get some good knowledge, and definitely have heard some good background. I think most people aren't aware of, so I think that's the purpose. So yeah, this has been great, and hopefully see you guys in Intersolar coming up here in a few weeks. So we'll be out there for sure.
Great.
Just kind of going same line of questioning, Vincent, though, in terms of challenges for the next year or so. What are your thoughts?
I mean, I would certainly agree with Greg on the O&M aspect of it. I mean, as a servicer, we have a network of O&M partners across the country. We have assets in 13 states, I believe now, and so but finding O&M partners can be a challenge as we're growing, and our footprint is growing. We're always looking for new partners, and there's some areas where it's pretty thin, right? Like, and it's the installers are very different from the O&M, right? Like installers usually don't want to do O&M. It's kind of a different business model, right? So it's so where you may be able to find a lot of installers, but it's a little more tougher to find good O&M partners. So that's certainly something we spent some time working on. For us, on the M&A side, the current debt markets certainly provide a challenge for us. It's very volatile. I mean, debt is a very, very important part of the capital stack. Not only when we're, acquiring existing seasoned assets, but also developers too, right? So, and so when that pricing goes so volatile, it becomes challenging because the economics are changing every day. Everybody, whether it's a developer or us as an M&A acquirer, we all have kind of a hurdle rate IRR that we're trying to achieve. To make sure that the deal makes sense for us. And so as the debt markets, are volatile, and we're seeing the yield curve moving, 12, 15 basis points a day, and it's becoming a kind of normal thing that creates a lot of challenges for us to price accurately and properly. So, but hopefully, within a couple of years, that's going to settle down. And then I guess maybe the last thing I would mention on the resi side where we're having to think about now is renewals and I think one of the other gentlemen had kind of referred to it earlier as well. But the contracts it's getting to that point where you're starting to seeing contract maturities. I mean, most of these are long dated contracts over the last decade. Whether it be 20 or 25-year contracts, it was kind of like almost an afterthought, but. But now we're getting closer, and we have to start spending time and think about okay, what are we going to do, and how are we going to facilitate, whether it's resi or other areas. I mean, Spruce has been fortunate enough. Well, I mean, one of the portfolios that we had acquired had a number of 10-year contracts in it, so we actually we're we're very lucky in that we actually had some real time experience. We moved through all those 10-year contracts and got some real data on what we can realistically expect in terms of renewals, what are removal costs coming in at, those types of things. So I think as the years, this next decade, I mean, that's definitely going to be a large part of the discussion.
So are you predicting or kind of seeing significant kind of structural changes in these contracts, or is it just kind of more Chris mentioned, hey, the available, my available spending is now, I gotta watch it a little bit more, right, with this uncertainty in the economy. So is it just more of, hey, we have to convince you to renew at that same price, or is it really the structure that was 10 years ago? 10 years ago, because the industry was so different, it's completely different now when we're trying to get someone for another 10-year contract.
Right. No, it's a good question. I mean, on the residential side, a lot of these contracts the rates are kind of escalating, often somewhere around 2 to 3% per year. And so that growth rate is a lot less than the rate at which the local utilities rates have been increasing. So once you get to the end of life, it actually becomes a kind of a relatively easy discussion in that, the customer often, is interested and is incentivized to renew, because they're going to continue paying a lower cost. Now, they can potentially buy the asset. The customers have an option to, purchase the asset outright, and and then they're responsible for making sure it's functioning and producing at peak capacity. So, but yeah, a lot of these customers, I mean, after they've been benefiting this for 20 years, they may be paying 16 or 17 cents per kilowatt hour. Or even like in the low 20s, I mean, out in California and things. I mean, and when you compare it to the local rates, I mean, it's a night and day difference, right? So, so there's a lot of incentives for customers to renew. Certainly, I mean, some of them are looking for new technology and things. So, and there's a lot of discussion about retrofitting their systems as storage kind of becomes more of a thing and more available and more affordable. So there's a lot of that, repowering systems, upgrading, expanding their systems. Certainly.
Okay. That's more on just choosing which direction, right? When comparing to alternatives, sounds like solar definitely has the edge there. Is just which direction now with all the different new options and technologies out there. Yeah, one thing I wanted to bring up more on, I guess, geopolitical kind of impact is China, right? With them really starting to surface, I guess, out of COVID, and hopefully picking up some production there. So there's going to be an impact there for production from China. Now, one of the things you hear from anyone in the industry, especially U.S. manufacturers, they'll say, well, the China arrays are not up to the right same quality level as those produced in the U.S. As they get more picked up and more as they pick up steam and getting back into the global supply chain, do you see any significant changes in direction in terms of what is going to happen here in terms of cost of input or quality of product, or right, increase O&M because maybe the product quality isn't up there. But I just want to open it up to that.
I can comment a little bit. So one of the things with the IRA is that there's a local content requirement and things need to be domestically manufactured. So the U.S. buyer consortium that bought 7 gigawatts worth of solar panels, like those, the way I read that, they have to be manufactured and purchased here in the U.S. So I'm not sure how that will affect panels coming in or other equipment coming in from other parts of the world, but certainly that act is the legislation is putting a laser beam focus on U.S. jobs and manufacturing.
Yeah, I mean, I I would love to see more jobs and more manufacturing happening here in this country. I mean, at Yacht Energy, we've actually talked about bringing some of that back from China and Taiwan, where we manufacture today. So, it's just a matter of timing. So as far as making that happen, again, it comes down to capital and time. And when can we actually get that going and started and actually make sure the quality, like you said, is good as we currently getting.
And just to jump in again, the downside of this is that we can't, the timepiece, we can't spin up here domestically, and then all of a sudden there's, people are looking at stalling projects because they feel like they can't purchase offshore. So I think again we'll have to see how it plays out. I feel like there'll be a good balance of both, but again, any U.S. based jobs is good for all of us here.
Yeah, as you mentioned, right? I guess it's more of a percentage, not an all or nothing U.S. based, but just maybe ramping that percentage of U.S. based over time as we can get production up. I did want to kind of open the floor, Vincent, Chris, Greg, if you had any questions for the rest of the group or just any thoughts you wanted to share.
Yeah, I'll start. One of the things that I think is important in this industry, and I think that the industry is starting to get there, is visibility to the information on site. For O&M, it's critical to be able to dial into a site, be able to see what's going on that site, maybe module by module or string by string, inverter by inverter, however we're looking at it, maybe even, battery as well. That visibility to be able to dive in and troubleshoot remotely when there is OEM requests or needs, we can send the right people with the right equipment at the right time as well. Scheduled maintenance is really the key piece. I mean, it's not a question of if, it's a question of when there is maintenance required, and having that knowledge ahead of time and understand the risk versus reward. Is it worth waiting 3 weeks to go out and fix it, or 3 months to go out and fix it and do service contract at that point? And what are we actually losing, for whatever event this happened, whether it be the inverter, the module, the battery, or whatever. So I think information is critical in this industry. And like I said, I think we're starting to see a lot more of it now, and the value of it, and the access to it as well. So, before it was on a computer, and now we're seeing a lot of handheld applications that service people have that available to them. We're also working on things like algorithms to be able to predict or see what's going on and make notifications. So again, information is powerful. This industry is starting to understand the importance of that. So I'm happy to see that happening.
Yeah, it's funny to see completely separate industries from solar, like AWS and right, just technology that's really helped the solar industry, right? Because you couldn't get that kind of compute or that kind of real-time data without cloud storage and that kind of quick compute capacity on your handheld device or iPad.
Yeah, I mean, I can speak from my company's perspective, and being able to see things remotely, being able to troubleshoot, within probably 0.1% accuracy, saying that tell the customer that you need to go to the site with this, and you should be on site for half an hour. That's pretty powerful. They no longer have to go out on site and look for something or try to figure it out or bring a module, an inverter, a battery, cable. I can tell them exactly what to bring and where it's located. That's huge. So that's the hidden cost or the hidden benefit, if you will, of having that monitoring.
Yeah, maybe I can chime in a little bit on that too. I mean, from our perspective, Spruce currently owns. We have about 320 megawatts of capacity over about 52,000 project sites across the country, and so all of them have, to monitor all of them, we need to have revenue grade meters on them that have a cellular capability to communicate data. And so one of the challenges that we experienced, within the past few years was the phase out of 3G, because 3G meters were all over the place. And so a very, very large percentage of our fleet had 3G meters. So there was certainly a race there to get these meters replaced, because, that literally it just 3G went offline on I forgot, I think it was early 2022, I think. But yeah, and we couldn't we couldn't monitor the sites after that. So there was a very heavy. I mean, we started early, but certainly with the supply chain and the pandemic and everything, and of course everybody else dealing with the same problem, certainly put a strain on the meter supply chain. But yeah, I mean, we've made great progress with it, but that's certainly something that comes top of mind to me.
Wow, I did not realize 3G was completely offline now.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
did it help with it, kind of just upgrading your meters to 4G or LTE?
That's right.
Bandwidth?
Yeah. For me to add here, Borrego has, I think, 1,600 separate CNI and utility sites that are under our care, and that we're only in the continental United States. So, we every day think about health and safety, not only for our field service people, but also, the big box stores that these rooftops, these solar systems are on top of. You're doing remote resets, make sure that you're not causing more of an issue that was there before. Having a buddy system when it's not required by OSHA, but sending 2 people in to do an inverter service, or certainly any medium or high voltage. So I think this will be a challenge for us, all of us, to continue to think about, not just on the cost end, but really let's keep everybody healthy and safe. Some other challenges that come to mind with solar and energy storage is just the integration of these systems into the existing power grid. There's so much that's going to be built, and either the grid doesn't exist, or it's outdated, or it needs to be updated. And of course, we're ironing out the variability of wind and solar with energy storage, which I think is fantastic. But we need a stable grid in order for that to be worthwhile. And then I think the scalability of the standardization, particularly when it comes to energy storage. When we have an O&M contract with an inverter, with inverters, it's actually so straightforward now. We just gather information. Here's what it's going to cost. But with energy storage, we're not the definition of what a preventive maintenance is. Is the OEM going to handle it? Is the integrator going to handle it? And then we're sharing inverters between the PV side and the energy storage side. So, I think working on some level of standardization to help the industry will, make things accelerate even more for us.
Well, awesome. Once again, thank you guys so much for the time. I think it's been amazing insight from I think three very different areas. So thanks to the audience for listening. Appreciate it very much, and guys, take care, and again, thank you.
Pleasure.
Thanks everyone.
How great was that? I felt like we hit a lot of interesting topics, including M&A, the IRA, O&M, energy management, and so on. So thank you again for listening. Please provide your feedback and any additional topics that we could have covered, or thoughts on future topics. Of course, thank you again to our speakers, Vincent Varughese from Spruce Power, Chris Barrett from Yada Energy, and Greg Shambo from Borrego. For more information on their organizations, please check out the websites in the posting. Thank you again for your time, and have a great one.